The reality of a shifter, presented by ShifterStars. A shifter, sometimes known as a were, is someone who morphs or shape-shifts themselves into another being. This may be spiritually or physically, but most are born this way. A physical shifter is a shifter that shape-shifts/morphs their body, while a reality shifter is a shifter that morphs/shape-shifts their reality. Though many may say that shifters are not more special, physically powerful or mentally strong as others, shifters do have a stronger instinct to be connected to another reality or another body. Though shifters can be human, not all of them are, and respecting that doesn't mean you treat them as a wild creature. Shifters are not carbon copies of their clones, their shifted forms or their reality, and so are to be treated the way they wish. During hard times, many shifters may become depressed like all living beings. Our hearts slow down and we take less time with stuff we enjoy because it no longer is favored. When that happens, shifting can feel like a burden, especially if you're a shifter with a goal of reaching that specific DR or physical form. There have been times where I choose not to shift due to outside forces and I get withdrawal because of it. It hurts to be a shifter because it's so intrinsic and bodily to me. Even when I reality shift. Being a shifter and having symptoms that hurt you can be a burden. That doesn't mean that being a shifter is a burden or that we are to put ourselves last for others. Shifters, especially physical shifters, get a lot of slack for being shifters. It is a popular hate train to jump on due to the fact that the supporting argument against shifters is that physics doesn't allow it.
When it comes to thinking about shifters as a whole, you can't seem to separate the idea of, lying and manipulation in certain circles. Certain circles will always think that this collection of people, this collection of real living beings are truly here to harm you, when in reality it's less of harm but more of a need for maybe a cry for help, maybe a need for community. We have lost that in the midst of the distinction from the alt.ware community to the Tumblr, and now to the most used site that a lot of the shifters are on, Discord. And all the websites, all the archives, everything seems to be gone. They seem to be lost to history due to the fact that a lot of people genuinely just don't, quote-unquote, believe in it anymore. And whether or not they've been forced to not believe it, or they actually never believed in it, that doesn't matter. It's the fact that we don't know where to turn. It would be the same way in the 1960s or 1970s, where the queer communities were tight-knit for a good reason. Because if you open your mouth, there's a tiny chance, not even a tiny chance, there's a huge chance that your afternoon, quote-unquote, club activities will be raided. There's the chance that your identity and your rights will be stripped from you for merely existing incorrectly. Of course, we're in 2023, so there's barely a threat, but there is a fear. I don't condone or believe that there is a quote-unquote war against shifters. That's not a real thing. Nobody could care less about us, which is why we're still here. If they even cared, they genuinely wouldn't let a lot of you guys live. I'll say that nicely. But with that, it doesn't matter about whether or not, it doesn't matter about whether or not there is freedom. It matters about whether or not you can take it. Take that freedom. Some people don't want to be free, and so they hide. Other people do want to be free, and so they try to be as loud as they can so that no one has to deal with being in fear. But even then, that fear is still present. With the fake claiming and the hate, it hasn't become such a problem anymore like it was in 2017 or earlier than that. It doesn't matter. Truly, it doesn't matter. I was going over a lot of my, the people I know in the shifter community, and I thought about it for a while. I thought about why fight? Why keep on fighting these, anti-shifters and stuff like that? Why fight something that is genuinely not caring? Why fight for something that wouldn't care less, or couldn't care less? It's one of the inspirations for this convention. Why care about being seen as important to people who already believe you're unimportant? Why make yourself feel worse by trying to confirm what they think about you instead of trying to figure out how you feel about yourself and expressing that in a way in which you are no longer seen as being evil? So you don't have the constant idea that since you are evil, you have to be evil. A lot of people, give in. They say, oh, if they see me as evil, I'm going to be evil. And that's the same thing with non-humanity. A lot of people who are traumatized or dehumanized have people who see them as non-human, so they say, oh, if they see me as non-human, I'm going to accept this non-human identity. A lot of people don't do that, but to the people who do, it messes with their head, it messes with your psyche, everything. I'm not saying that that's not a part of you that you can accept. I'm saying that it's a part of you that you have to realize was created because of your mind, because of you. And it's a creation, and therefore you can't deny it. You can only accept it, and that's what they're doing. And I don't want the shifter community to specifically dig themselves into that hole where it is consistent enough to the point where they are always and always forcing themselves to be evil or be scary or be this and that because they have so much pent-up rage from not being accepted. Don't do that, because not only does it do nothing, it hurts you more than it hurts other people, because other people, like I said, couldn't care less, and so you are the only person truly thinking that they care. You are the only person thinking that they want anything else other than a reaction from you. They personally do not care. I've been through, the other kid community and the circles of, the quote-unquote gray muzzles. And it's all, the subculture, it's all hierarchy. It's all based on who is more important in the community. And those more important people are listened to more. And everybody else is either shamed for bringing up an idea or ignored, because not only do they have less of a following, but they don't have importance. That's the main struggle. That's the main thing I didn't want to do when I was thinking about this convention and the community I want to build for the shifters. I don't want to create a hierarchy or a level of importance for other people. I want to create a community, a basket full of people who have one shared interest, and they don't even have to agree with anything else they say. It doesn't matter. Don't agree with pronouns, I don't care, as long as you use the ones that people request. Don't agree with the president, don't care, as long as you respect other people's opinions. Don't agree with law, I do not care, as long as you respect the fact that it's still a law. I personally do not care. I care about you as a person and how that affects your identity and you as a shifter. Your practice, your everything centers around you as a person. If you as a person is molded to be mean and evil, I'm going to think that you as a shifter is a lot more worse. You are going to be a lot more worse than me. I don't want to have created a community where people with this self-proclaimed identity fail to realize that not everything has to be a hierarchy. There doesn't have to be an alpha, there doesn't have to be gray muscles, there doesn't have to be anything at all. It doesn't have to be a certain subculture over another, like in the otherkin in Alter Human community. There doesn't need to be something like that. You don't need that. Escape from it. And I think that's one of my hard truths, because Harlequin, they are very outspoken about a lot of other things in this specific community, and they don't care about whether or not it goes against somebody's personal beliefs. I believe they care less, and they focus more on the fact that the general idea versus the personal idea. If the personal idea conflicts with the general idea, that doesn't mean both of them are wrong. It just means one is going to be preferred, the personal, over the other because it's personal. Well, the generalized idea is a lot more, quote-unquote, logical to the most of the population. So the same thing with a lot of people who don't believe in the conservation of mass, which that's a logic and a physics thing which you cannot deny. But if you personally feel as though that law bends a little bit for you, beautiful. Harley Q most likely would not argue you on that. At least from what I've seen, they most likely will not argue with you on that. But if you miscrew, like, our history, or you downplay the experiences, I'm pretty sure they would call you out. And then this segment from their website, Spirit Shifter, this segment that is I believe, the first paragraph of the narrative here, they say, you don't have to do anything special to shift if you're a shifter. No amount of magic spells, potions, or wishing will push a shift closer. If you're not a shifter, no amount of hypnosis, mental shifting, or subliminals will make it possible for you to shift. No amount of wishing and wanting will change who you are genetically. 2020. I included this in this panel specifically because this not only matters, but is the first rule of awakening or realizing the calling. And the practice as a whole. You don't enter a specific community and believe that if you do a certain amount of things, you will win. You will be able to do the thing. No, because there are a lot of factors, especially when it comes to stuff like this. You kind of have to work it out and make sure that it's not this and it's not that. The same way a lot of people in the community have to say, oh, it's not otherkin, it's not alderhuman, but it's also not clinical lycanthropy or clinical allanthropy. It's not that. And there's nothing you could really do about it when they say it's not that. You can't convince them, hey, actually, no, by scientific proof, it is that. You can't do that. Because at the end of the day, it's a choice whether or not they believe in you or believe in that. Thinking about the loneliness as a coping mechanism. I didn't quote anything in this specific slideshow or on this specific page. So the amino link is specifically about, do you think shifters should be more open? A lot of the consensus basically said that they should wait. And waiting is what they've been doing for the past decade, actually. You know, I say that most of them are quiet on all platforms. It took me 2 years to, get out of the denial stage and then go into the research stage and then into the understanding stage. There's just so much that a lot of it, they would rather hide and use loneliness as a crutch to get their results or to get their community than they would openness. Because when they're open, they believe there is a war, quote-unquote war, yeah. It all connects, it weaves back together. There is no war. And that war, fear, comes from the hate train and the fake claiming and the death threats and everything. And that piles onto a community trauma where it is inherently going to get worse if we are not open. Because once we are open, we are, wouldn't say invincible, but we are able to combat actual harmful information from spreading, which causes more and more fake claiming. We don't want that. So we don't allow that. For the most part, a lot of people do not feel comfortable being open because, of course, ridicule. That's fine. But they do find pockets of the internet. I believe I heard that a lot of people in certain areas do end up finding, like, shifters offline. And they do have communities offline, like pods, which is aquatic collections, usually for mermaids or aquatic shifters. And here it says in the brambles, where they're hiding, there's communities. And yeah, we do hide in communities, but most of the time we hide by ourselves. And again, the inspiration for the convention was to get out there, to get into something that isn't just, oh, I'm this, here's this, you can't debate me on it. Okay, well, I'm not sure if I'm this. I'm not sure if I'm that either. And you can debate me on it, because debating me not only helps me realize that maybe it's not for me, maybe it's not me, but it also helps me realize that maybe it is me, and maybe I was in denial. A lot of that does, a lot of stories do have people coming to terms with it by self-discovery. But I've never heard of a story where an anti-shifter or anything else actively does help someone find themselves. Either way, with the picture here, it says social presence, which means the engagement with other people in the community. That's pretty important. So with the shifter community, we do have engagement. It's very low, but we do have engagement. Again, the hiding, the loneliness as a coping mechanism or crutch, that's a thing. We do have supporting discourse, but also we have discourse that pits us against each other sometimes. The interaction with the goals and our mindsets being connected as, oh, this is the goal I want, and this is the goal you want, let's meet in the middle, something like that. Learning, climate, it's all educational. That's what the community is, and we must keep it that way But once you start forgetting that a lot of people don't care because they can use the excuse of, oh, well, they're not real, so their history, their terms, their relationships, their friends, their everything doesn't matter, it's not real, and it is all a quote-unquote delusion, which is the argument that has been thrown at me a lot, which not only is ableist, but also, do you know what a delusion is? And those arguments, they come from, the communities that specifically are also identifying as, altered human or non-human. It's like, are you calling yourself delusional by looking in a mirror? Or are you calling a certain section of people, aka shifters, delusional because they aren't the same as you? Which gets into a whole nother can of worms of the hierarchy of, that specific community and much more. At the end of the day, finding community, the loneliness, a lot of the hard truths are like the beginner levels, and the hate, and being seen as a burden, and whether or not it's important, all of it is minuscule in comparison to the actual emotions and the actual friends and the family or the relationships you may create in that space. All of that doesn't matter as long as you have people. You can stick to your tight-knit community as a shifter, or you can open up and be loud and say things you want to say. Because can you get arrested for saying you're a shifter? No. I don't think people are going to believe you, but you don't need people to believe them. That is the moral. They don't need to believe you. You need to believe yourself. And you have to do research, and you have to know, and you have to be smart, and you have to be quick and witty. You have to do everything, because at the end of the day, they're going to try to call you, quote-unquote, delusional.